It's getting warmer in the greenhouse, so I started more seeds and transplanted my ginger. I started the ginger in my kitchen a few weeks ago. They finally sprouted and started to outgrow their containers, so I knew I needed to get them into bigger pots. I transplanted a few ginger starts into 10-gallon pots, using mostly organic compost and a little bit of potting soil. Ginger loves nutrient-rich soil, so I also added some kelp and azomite. The more ambitious I've become this year for the growing season, I'm beginning to outgrow my greenhouse space. I realize that means I need to be smarter about what I grow and when. I started my cool weather greens, herbs, and vegetables first, knowing that I'd be able to transplant those into the garden within the first week of April. In April, I'll be starting many of my warm weather crop, such as tomatoes. My last frost date is April 30th, so many of those won't be ready for the garden until the first part of May. Now that spring is here, I'm eager to begin the garden season, and I'm excited for what's yet to come on the homestead. Since the weather has gotten warmer, we took care of a few other projects around the house. We stripped and repainted the deck, only to discover that much of the wood is rotting, so we know we'll have to completely replace it within the next year or two. For now, a fresh coat of paint brightens it up and makes it feel new again. We also put new baffles and insulation in the attic crawl spaces to improve airflow. The previous winter was brutal, and we got hit with frigid cold temperatures and discovered that due to the lack of proper airflow in these spaces, it was causing ice dams that eventually resulted in a leak within our home. So this was a priority to fix. The old insulation was moldy, so we had to treat the space for mold first before we put in new insulation using white vinegar. We had a new addition to our homestead a few weeks ago, a rooster, who we now call Elvis. The arborist who cut down one of our large trees happened to have one that needed a new home. Look at all of these grubs from the tree that we just cut down that we're going to give to the chickens. They're going to absolutely go nuts over these. We'll give some to the rooster. Buddy, look at these. He's a good rooster, but he got bullied out of his flock by the other two roosters he had, so he brought him here. I wanted to be sure he got along well with the rest of the flock before we agreed to make it a permanent thing. Not having a rooster before, the girls took some time to get used to the new male energy being around. It certainly changed the dynamic of the flock, but now they have found their flow with one another, and it's as though he has always been a part of this family. Having a rooster around helps reduce the amount of stress on the hens from constantly being on the lookout for predators, and therefore it improves their egg laying. Ever since we got this rooster, the chickens have been going deeper into the woods. And luckily, the rooster will crow, letting us know, hey, the hens are a little far from home. And so I'm able to spot them going down some of the trails. But I'm trying to keep a close watch on this because obviously we don't want to lose any hens. And I know that the rooster is here to protect them and is doing a really, really good job of that. But I'm gonna have to watch this because much of our property is not fenced in. And so they can easily go into the woods. In the past, they never really tried to do that too much.
They've just been getting over time a little braver, especially now that they're more familiar with the land. But with the rooster around, it seems like they have gotten quite comfortable. But I found them, so that's good.
Since all the snow and ice melted and spring has begun to settle in, we've been getting a lot of rain. Many of you know from my past videos that when it rains heavy here, it floods. Luckily, our house and garden is on a hill, but the greenhouse and pastures get hit every time. I knew this was something we were going to have to address, especially if we want to help protect this land. There are two major issues. The storm drain that runs under our driveway dumps water onto our pasture because the swale abruptly stops, giving the water nowhere to go. The other major issue is on the opposite side of the pasture, where our neighbor's pond is. The overflow of their pond is dumping onto our pasture as well, which is eroding our land, causing long-term damage and marshy conditions. There's a stream that runs through our property, winding its way from the pasture, behind the greenhouse, and into the creek that runs adjacent to our property. Some of the excess water flows into the stream, but it's not enough to contain it, which is why we experience the flooding that we have. So I spent many months observing the water to see how it naturally flows, even getting out there during the heaviest of rains to study its behavior. Observing the water like this helped me come up with a plan to hopefully reduce the amount of flooding we have by helping the water flow better, with more ease, not try to stop it.
So right over here is where the storm drain is emptying out. So you can see there's a lot of water coming through here. And it's just forking off right now in either direction. But it doesn't have anywhere to continue its flow, so it's just dumping water all over. So this is what we want to expand this, dig, excavate this whole area going across over where their pond has the overflow, which empties out on the other side into the creek. You can hear, if you can, the gushing from their pond going into the creek right now on the other side. So we're hoping that will help with a lot of the water building up from this area if we have a deep creek going through it. That will, of course, put a bridge so that we can get to the other side. On that field. So my hope is that on either side of this creek bed, we can plant some water-loving trees like black locust, someone mentioned willow, and I have native hazelnuts coming, and continue to just plant. That way those trees will suck up the water as well. They will just drink that up and continue to provide a lot of nutrition to the soil. And as you can see, this is just built up underneath with good, nutritious soil. So being able to use that will be really, really great. So combination of Hugelkultur beds, chinampas is going to be our best bet in this area, creating some canals and then some deep mounds that we can plant into will help with this area. They will be, in a sense, self-watering beds.
From that, we'll have another swale flowing straight down the center that will connect to the already existing stream, which will also expand to straighten it out more to allow for better flow of water and be an even bigger container for the amount of water coming through that area. We'll have a second connecting swale that will also help the water flow into the stream. In addition to all of this, we'll use the dirt that's excavated to create mounds that we'll plant water-loving trees and herbs into, that will reinforce the walls of the swales and further reduce the amount of water coming through from the water-thirsty vegetation that will be growing there. To address the issue around the greenhouse, I started to dig a small swale that runs alongside our stream, connecting it to the stream in 2 different places along the way. So I want to start the swale where the water's naturally flowing, have that go all the way through. Right here is where this funnels into the creek. Maybe even extend that, widen that, have that swale continue down and meet near the greenhouse where we'll put some mulch beds and some additional trenches going directly in front of the greenhouse with some drainage to reduce the water that builds up in that area. And then in this wide open space on either side of this swale, I will put some Hugelkultur beds that will be mounded raised beds to address a lot of the flooding issues along the sides here. We'll do one there, one here. I may even on this side plant some water-loving trees right here, which would also help. Maybe even plant some trees here on either side of the mounded bed. Maybe even over here. Around the greenhouse and well pump, I'll be adding a thick layer of hard wood chips, which will act like that of a sponge and give a cottagey pathway around the greenhouse and water pump that I'll border with stones. In front of the greenhouse, we'll dig out another trench that will extend from one side to the other, lay down 6-inch drain pipe to further help with the water issue in this area. We'll bury the pipe with dirt and plant grass seed to cover it.
viejo sofá.
Eventually, I'll be adding a thick layer of compost on top of these beds and then covering them with leaf mulch. But I wanted to hold off until I see how these beds stand against the flow of water that comes through here after a heavy rain, since we still don't have the major excavation work done yet in the pasture. We hope to begin that work in the next couple weeks. My plan is to make this area more efficient and also beautiful. When we moved here nearly 2 years ago, we didn't know about the flooding that this part of the land had been enduring. We didn't have a greenhouse, or gardens, or chickens. All we had were big plans to build a homestead and farm, a vision that I had been dreaming about for years. Being surrounded by nature, by trees and plants that feed us and the earth. When you begin to turn your dream into a reality, there is always something to learn along the way. It's a journey that's constantly changing, much like the seasons and the earth around us. And just like the water flows, I realized I must learn to flow along with it. Be adaptable and not resist change. Since we've been here, building our homestead together, there's always something new to explore, new projects to discover, and new problems to solve. It's certainly not the easiest life and definitely keeps you on your toes, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. The life we have out here is worth every moment, every struggle, every ache, and every pain. It's our safe space, our comfort, our home. And what a beautiful home it is.